The air in the grand chamber of the High Synod was not merely stale. It was heavy with the weight of centuries of stagnation, smelling of ozone, burnt sacrificial oils, and the coppery tang of heated argumentation. The chamber itself was a vast, cavernous hollow carved into the heart of the capital moon, Ethelgard, orbiting the gas giant Othries. Above, the crystalline dome offered a view of the swirling, violent storms of the giant, a constant reminder of the turbulence that governed the galaxy. But inside, the turbulence was political, intellectual, and driven by a fear that no one dared to name aloud, save for the one elder standing alone at the center of the obsidian dais. The High Synod of the Valhar Dominion, masters of 100 systems, conquerors of the Scutum Centaurus arm, sat in their tiered rows, their chitinous armor clicking softly against the stone benches, their multifaceted eyes fixed on the solitary figure of High Counselor Vexil. Vexil was old, his carapace graying and scarred from wars fought before many of the younger warlords in the upper tiers had even hatched, and he held himself with a weary dignity that infuriated the warcast. Vexil tapped his staff against the polished floor, the sound ringing out like a singular, sharp note in a symphony of murmurs. The noise died down, replaced by a suffocating silence that seemed to press against the eardrums of every sentient being in the room. He looked up, meeting the gaze of Grand Warlord Kravik, a towering figure of aggression and muscle who sat upon the throne of bone, his mandibles twitching with impatience. Kravik wanted war. The entire warcast wanted war. They had grown fat and restless on the peace of the last cycle, and their fleet sat idle in the void, their fusion lances cooling, their warriors growing soft. They looked at the new arrivals on the Galactic stage, the Terran coalition, and saw prey. They saw a species that did not posture, did not boast, and did not engage in the ritualistic border skirmishes that defined Valhar diplomacy. They saw weakness in the silence. Vexil saw something else entirely. He saw the abyss. "You speak of them as if they are livestock waiting for the slaughter," Vexil said, his voice low, vibrating through the subsonic sensors of the counselor's translators. "You speak of the Terrans as soft-skinned bipeds who have stumbled into the void by accident, clutching their primitive fusion drives and their kinetic weapons like children holding sticks. You look at their lack of biological armor and assume fragility. You look at their silence and assume fear. And because of this arrogance, you are about to doom us all." Kravik leaned forward, the hydraulics in his ceremonial armor hissing. "We are the Valhar," the warlord rumbled, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "We have broken the shell of the Chitauri. We have burned the hive minds of the Vane. We do not fear a species that has not yet even harnessed the energy of a hypernova. The Terrans occupy systems rich in heavy metals and rare isotopes. They refuse to pay the tithe. They refuse to acknowledge our supremacy. They send automated messages citing sovereign rights. Rights? There are no rights in the void, old one. There is only strength and the will to use it. We will send the Third Armada. We will burn one of their outer colonies. We will show them the hierarchy of the stars, and they will bow. It is the way of things." A roar of approval went up from the warcast tiers, a cacophony of screeching and clicking that deafened the few scholars and scientists huddled in the lower rings. Vexil did not flinch. He waited, his stillness a stark contrast to the aggressive posturing around him. When the noise finally subsided, he spoke again, and this time his voice carried a tremor not of age, but of genuine, visceral terror. "You intend to give them a warning," Vexil stated, not as a question, but as a condemnation. "You intend to destroy a colony, kill a few million of them, and then wait for their diplomats to come begging for terms. You expect them to ask for a ceasefire. You expect them to negotiate. You operate under the assumption that war is a dialogue, a series of escalations where each side is given the chance to retreat before the end." "Is that not the universal law?" Kravik sneered. "Pain teaches submission. We give them a taste of extinction, and they will choose servitude." "The humans do not believe in the last chance," Vexil said, the words falling like stones into deep water. "I spent 10 cycles in the diplomatic enclave on Babylon Station. I watched them. I did not just trade with them. I studied their history, their philosophy, their psychology. You see their silence as hesitation. It is not. It is calculation. The Terrans do not view war as a sport or a rite of passage. They view it as a failure of system logic. To them, violence is a broken equation, but if you force them to solve it, they do not solve it halfway. Why do not trade blows? If you attack them, you do not start a war. You flip a switch. You move them from a state of peace to a state of total negation. There is no middle ground. There is no negotiation once the first shot is fired. They will not give you one last chance to surrender. They will simply remove the obstacle." The chamber grew quiet again, but it was a skeptical quiet. A young subcommander from the 5th Fleet stood up, his armor gleaming with fresh polish. "Counselor, this is myth-making. We have scanned their ships. Their shields are standard resonance barriers. Their weapons are high-velocity railguns and plasma torpedoes. They are formidable, perhaps, but they are not gods. We outnumber them 10 to 1 in the sector. Are you suggesting that their psychology somehow negates the laws of physics and logistics?" "I am suggesting," Vexel replied, turning to face the young officer, "that their physics are not what they seem and their logistics are terrifyingly efficient, but more than that, it is their will. I witnessed a minor dispute between a Terran mining vessel and a pirate clan from the Rim Worlds 3 cycles ago. The pirates boarded the Terran ship. They took hostages. They demanded a ransom, standard procedure. The Terran government did not send a negotiator. They did not send a credit transfer. They sent a message that simply read, 'Release them or cease to exist.' The pirates laughed. They killed one hostage to show they were serious." Vexel paused, letting the memory wash over him. He shuddered visibly. "And," Kravik goaded, "did the monkeys cry?" 30 seconds after the hostage died," Vexel whispered, "the pirate base, an asteroid fortress deeply embedded in a chaotic belt, simply vanished. There was no fleet. There was no grand battle. A single projectile, fired from a range we could not calculate, moving at a velocity that rendered point defense useless, struck the rock. It was not an explosive. It was a relativistic kinetic impactor. The base, the pirates, the hostages, and the surrounding debris were vaporized into plasma in a nanosecond. The Terrans did not mourn the hostages. They did not issue a press release. They simply marked the sector as clear and resumed mining. They accepted the loss of their own people as the cost of ensuring the threat was permanently removed. They do not bargain with probability, Warlord. They eliminate the variable." "A single incident," Kravik dismissed, waving a heavy hand. "Pirates are not the Valhar Armada. We have capital ships. We have planetary shields. We have the glory of our ancestors driving us. You are old, Vexel. Your blood has cooled. You fear the shadow of a whisper. The decision has been made. The 3rd Armada launches within the rotation. We will strike the Terran colony at Proxima Centauri. We will burn their orbital tether, and we will wait for them to beg." Vexel closed his eyes. He felt a profound sense of grief, not just for himself, but for the history that was about to be erased. He looked at the faces around him, proud, angry, eager for glory. They were children playing with a loaded weapon they did not understand. "Then I resign," Vexel said softly, "and I will retire to the furthest outpost of the Dominion in the hopes that when the wave comes, it will dissipate before it reaches me. Do not expect a diplomatic channel to open after you strike, Kravik. Do not prepare your speeches for their surrender. Prepare your souls for the void." With that, the old diplomat turned and walked out of the grand chamber. Behind him, the sound of applause and war chants erupted, sealing the fate of the Valhar Dominion. They celebrated their coming victory, unaware that they had just signed their own death warrants. The attack on Proxima Centauri was textbook Valhar doctrine. The 3rd Armada, consisting of 400 heavy cruisers and 3 super dreadnoughts, dropped out of warp at the edge of the system. They broadcasted their demands on all frequencies: immediate surrender of the system, the dismantling of all military fortifications, and the handover of the planetary governor as a hostage. The response from the surface was an automated loop. "This is Terran coalition space. You are in violation of sovereign territory. Depart immediately or face consequences." Fleet Admiral Thrax, commanding the 3rd Armada, laughed from the bridge of his flagship, the Fist of Glory. "Consequences," he mocked. "They speak like automated attendants. Target the orbital tether. Full power to the forward lances. Let us cut the cord." The beams of coherent plasma lashed out across the dark, striking the massive carbon nanotube structure that connected the surface of the planet to the orbital shipyards. The structure groaned, the stress sensors screaming across the spectrum, and then it snapped. The backlash was catastrophic. The upper station, unmoored, drifted violently into the shipping lanes, colliding with civilian transport. Orcs, the lower cable, whipped through the atmosphere, causing sonic booms that shattered cities and leveled forests. Debris rained down like meteors. Thousands died in the first hour. "Target destroyed," the tactical officer reported, his voice flush with excitement. "Shields holding at maximum. No return fire detected." "They are stunned," Thrax declared. "They are paralyzed by the display of power. Open a channel to their command center. Tell them this is the first lesson. Tell them we await their surrender." The channel remained open. Static hissed. The minutes stretched into hours. The Valhar fleet held position, weapons hot, sensors sweeping the void for the Terran response fleet. They expected a desperate counterattack, a swarm of fighters, or perhaps a frantic plea for mercy. They got nothing. The silence of the Proxima system was absolute. The planet below burned, the fires visible from orbit, but the Terran military frequency was dead. There was no chatter, no distress beacons. Even the civilian traffic had simply stopped. It was as if the entire human presence had held its breath. "Are their comms down?" Thrax asked, a flicker of unease pricking at his confidence. "Negative, Admiral. Their network is active. Encrypted traffic has spiked by 40,000%. They are talking to each other. They are just not talking to us." "Arrogance," Thrax spat. "Prepare the bombardment cannons. If they will not speak, we will make them scream. Target the capital city." Just as the order left his mandibles, the sensor officer let out a strangled gasp. "Admiral, energy spike detected. Massive. It's everywhere." "Define everywhere," Thrax barked. "The entire system heliopause. Gravitational waves are compressing. Space-time is folding." On the main view screen, the stars didn't blink out. They distorted. The background starfield smeared, turning into streaks of indigo and violet. A profound sense of wrongness permeated the bridge, a physical sensation of nausea as the laws of physics in the local area were aggressively rewritten. "Slipspace rupture," the tactical officer screamed. "But the scale, it's not a ship, it's the size of a moon." It wasn't a moon. It was a fleet, but not a fleet as the Valhar understood it. They were used to formations, lines of battle, flanking maneuvers, distinct vessels. What emerged from the tier in reality was a wall, a solid, interlocking lattice of geometric shapes, blacker than the void between galaxies, absorbing all light. It was a shifting, fractal megastructure that seemed to construct itself out of the vacuum, extending for thousands of kilometers. There were no engine flares, no windows, no visible weapon ports, just a monolithic slab of obsidian geometry that blocked out the sun. "Hail them," Thrax shouted, his voice cracking. "Power to forward shields, all batteries fire at will." The Valhar fleet unleashed hell. Plasma lances, antimatter warheads, kinetic rails, enough firepower to crack a planet's crust, slammed into the black wall. And nothing happened. The energy didn't deflect, it didn't explode. It was absorbed. The black surface seemed to drink the plasma, the ripples vanishing like rain into a dark ocean. The kinetic rounds impacted and simply ceased to have momentum, falling dead against the hull or being dismantled at the atomic level. Then the message came. It bypassed the communications officer. It bypassed the encryption protocols. It spoke directly from every speaker on every ship, and simultaneously it hijacked the personal audio implants of every Valhar warrior. The voice was synthetic, calm, and terrifyingly devoid of anger. It sounded like the voice of a machine that had been given the task of euthanizing a sick animal. "This is the Terran Coalition defense grid. You have successfully demonstrated hostile intent. You have caused the loss of human life. You have ignored the boundary protocols. The diplomatic phase is concluded. The assessment phase is complete. The verdict is total neutralization." "We wish to negotiate," Thrax screamed into the comms, his bravado shattered in the face of the impossible scale before him. "We demand terms. We offer a ceasefire." The voice returned, immediate and cold. "Your culture operates on the principle of escalation and submission. You believe violence is a language. We do not. To us, violence is a systemic error. We do not debate errors. We correct them. You were warned by your own counsel. You chose this trajectory. There are no terms. There is only the end of the threat." The black wall shifted. Sections of the geometry rotated, revealing apertures that glowed with a pale, ghostly blue light, Cherenkov radiation from something that shouldn't exist in normal space. "They are charging something," the sensor officer whispered, paralyzed. "Admiral, the energy readings? They are extracting zero-point energy from the vacuum itself. They are collapsing the local quantum field." "Evasive maneuver." Jump now," Thrax howled. "We can't. The gravity well of that thing has locked us in. Our drives are dead." The blue light intensified. It wasn't a beam. It was a wave, a pulse of coherent entropy that washed over the Valhar fleet. On the bridge of the Fist of Glory, Thrax watched his hands dissolve. There was no pain, only a cold numbness. The metal of the ship, the flesh of his crew, the very air they breathed, it all unraveled at the molecular level, turning into gray dust. The Third Armada didn't explode. It was erased. In the span of 10 seconds, 400 ships were reduced to a cloud of inert silicon and carbon atoms drifting in the silence. The black wall remained for a moment longer, a tombstone over the grave of the aggressors, and then, with a distortion of light, it vanished, leaving the Proxima system quiet once more. The news of the Third Armada's disappearance reached Ethelgard within the hour. It was impossible, the warcast claimed. A sensor glitch, a cosmic anomaly. But then the data logs arrived, burst transmitted by a scout probe that had remained at the edge of the system. The video feed played in the Grand Chamber. The mockery, the attack, the silence, the arrival of the Black Wall, and the erasure. Silence reigned in the High Synod. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a cold, sweating fear. Grand Warlord Kravik sat on his throne of bone, his hands trembling. He looked small now. "Call Vexil," he croaked. "Find High Counselor Vexil. Bring him here. He knows them. He can speak to them. We must offer a truce." But Vexil was not in the capital. He was in his retreat on the ice moon of Korra, watching the sky, and the sky was changing. The Terrans did not stop at Proxima. The doctrine of total negation meant exactly that. The threat was not the fleet. The threat was the entity that launched the fleet. The Terrans had traced the command codes. They had mapped the Valhar logistics network. They had identified the source of the aggression. In the skies over Ethelgard, the stars began to disappear. Not one by one, but in great swathes, blocked out by the arrival of the Terran retaliation. They did not come with invasion armies to occupy cities. They did not come with dropships to capture resources. They came with the silence. Massive tetrahedral structures dropped into low orbit, hanging like swords of Damocles over every major city of the Dominion. They did not fire. They simply hovered, their presence disrupting the magnetic fields of the planets, shutting down power grids, neutralizing defense networks, and grounding all flight. The entire Valhar Dominion, a civilization of 100 systems, was effectively turned off in a single simultaneous strike. Kravik stood in the center of the Grand Chamber, which was now lit only by emergency chemical torches. The holographic projectors were dead. The air recyclers were failing. The doors to the chamber burst open, not by guards, but by the sheer pressure of the panic outside. A figure walked in. It was not a Valhar. It was a biped, clad in a sleek white environmental suit with a mirrored faceplate. It was flanked by 2 floating drones that hummed with menacing potential. The figure walked with a calm, purposeful gait, ignoring the cowering warlords. The figure stopped before the dais. The faceplate retracted, revealing a human face, a woman middle-aged with eyes that looked like they had seen the heat death of the universe and found it wanting. "I am Admiral Vance," she said. Her voice was not amplified, but in the dead silence of the room it carried to every corner. "I represent the Terran Coalition." Kravik rose, trying to muster the last shreds of his dignity. "Admiral, we are prepared to discuss terms. We acknowledge your victory. We will pay reparations. We will cede territory. We demand a cessation of—" "You are confused," Vance interrupted softly. "You think this is a negotiation. You think we are here to trade land for peace." She looked around the room, her gaze sweeping over the terrified assembly. "You attacked a civilian population. You destroyed a colony tether. You killed 14,312 human beings." "It was an act of war," Kravik shouted. "War has casualties. We are ready to end it." "The war ended 20 minutes ago when we dismantled your military capability across all sectors," Vance said, checking a datapad on her wrist. "Your fleets are gone. Your shipyards are slag. Your communications are under our control. You are no longer a state. You are a logistical problem." She stepped closer. "We do not want your territory. We have more resources than we can use. We do not want your slaves. We find the practice abhorrent. We do not want your tribute. We want safety. And our calculations show that as long as the Valhar exist as a militaristic empire, our safety is at 0.4 probability. That is unacceptable." "So you will exterminate us?" a younger counselor cried. D'Out falling to his knees. "You will wipe us out like you did the fleet." Vance looked at him, and for the first time her expression softened, but it wasn't with pity. It was with a strange, philosophical fatigue. "No," she said, "genocide is inefficient. It is also ethically bankrupt. We are not monsters. We are simply thorough. We are going to restructure you." She tapped her wrist. "We have already deployed atmospheric nanites. They are dismantling your heavy weaponry. They are rendering your fissionable materials inert. They are rewriting the firmware of your technology to prevent the construction of warp drives for the next 500 years. You will be confined to your home systems. You will relearn how to live without conquest. You will learn agriculture, art, philosophy. You will learn to be neighbors, or you will wither in the dark. Kravik stared at her, horror dawning. You are caging us like beasts. We are quarantining you, Vance corrected. Like a virus. You had the chance to be part of the galactic community. You had the warning. You chose to be a pathogen. Now you will be cured. This is slavery, Kravik roared, reaching for the ceremonial blade at his belt. The drones flanking Vance didn't even move. A beam of invisible force slammed Kravik into the throne, pinning him there with the weight of a mountain. It is survival, Vance said. For us, and ultimately for you. Because if we didn't do this, if we didn't put you in the cradle, you would attack us again in a generation. And next time, the algorithm might decide that quarantine is too risky. Next time, it might choose deletion. She turned to leave, but stopped as a familiar figure emerged from the shadows of the entrance. It was Vexil. He looked tired, his robes dusty from his journey. He looked at the human admiral, then at his defeated warlord. Counselor Vexil, Vance nodded respectfully. We received your transmission before the attack. Your attempt to warn them is noted. It is the primary reason the algorithm chose quarantine over erasure. You saved your species today. Vexil bowed his head, his mandibles trembling. They did not listen. They never listen. They will listen now, Vance said. They have 500 years to listen. Admiral, Vexil asked, his voice rasping. Why do you possess this power? A species that preaches peace yet wields the power of gods. You dismantled us in an hour. You could rule the galaxy. Why do you hide? Why do you stay silent? Vance paused. The mirrored faceplate slid back over her face, hiding her eyes, but her voice dropped an octave, losing its diplomatic veneer and revealing a core of deep, ancient fear. You think we built these fleets to fight you? Vance asked, and the question hung in the air like a blade. You think we cracked the code of zero-point energy and built planetary shields because we were afraid of the Valhar, or the Chitauri, or anyone in this galaxy? She pointed up through the crystalline dome, past the storms of Othries, towards the deep, dark void between the galactic arms. We are silent because we are listening, Vance whispered. And we are armed because we know what is coming. We are not the predators, Counselor. We are the ones digging the trenches. We are building the wall. What is coming? Vexil breathed, the dread pooling in his stomach. A signal, Vance said. We detected it 50 years ago. It's not from this galaxy. It's moving fast. It consumes everything in its path. Stars, planets, dark matter. It's an entropy wave, a hunger that spans the cosmos. We call it the Great Filter. The room was so quiet that the sound of Kravik's labored breathing was like a scream. We tried to warn the galaxy, Vance continued. But everyone was too busy fighting over borders and pride, so we stopped talking. We started building. We decided to secure our own backyard. We don't have time for your wars, Valhar. We don't have time for your posturing. Every ounce of energy you waste on conquest is energy we need to survive what's coming. She turned back to the exit, the white suit glowing in the gloom. You are under our protection now, she said, and the words felt less like a comfort and more like a sentence. Not because we like you, but because when the filter arrives, we will need every firing solution, every resource, and every sentient mind that can hold a rifle. You have 500 years to grow up. Do not waste them. The human walked out, leaving the Valhar in the ruins of their empire, stripped of their weapons, their pride, and their illusions. Vexil looked at Kravik, who was slumped on his throne, a broken king of a broken world. He looked up at the sky, where the human ships hung like silent sentinels. He realized then that the silence of the humans wasn't arrogance, it was focus. The galaxy was a noisy room full of children squabbling over toys, while the humans stood at the window, watching the storm approach, sharpening their knives. We must begin, Vexil said into the silence. Begin what? A sub-commander asked, weeping. To learn, Vexil said, picking up a datapad that Vance had left behind. To learn how to be quiet and how to fight the dark. The Valhar Dominion ended that day. The Valhar Protectorate began, and deep in the void the humans returned to their work, watching the edge of the universe, waiting for the real war to begin. They would not give the darkness a last chance either. The transition was not easy. For the first decade, the Valhar raged against the cage. There were riots in the hives of Ethelgard. Warlords tried to bypass the nanite inhibitors, trying to hotwire fusion cores to create weapons. Every attempt resulted in a localized power failure, a gentle but firm reminder from the Terran oversight AI that such actions were prohibited. The humans did not occupy their worlds with troops. There were no boots on the ground. There were only the silver tetrahedrons in the sky, silent, watchful, and omnipotent. Vexil became the first speaker of the Protectorate. It was a thankless job. He had to bridge the gap between a humiliated warrior culture and their cold, distant wardens. He met with Admiral Vance once a year on a neutral station orbiting a dead moon. "They hate you," Vexil told her during the 10th year. They sat in a stark white room, drinking a synthetic tea that tasted of jasmine and heavy water. "The youth sing songs of the day the sky broke. They call you the pale tyrants." "Let them hate," Vance replied, looking older now, her hair streaked with silver. "Hate is a fuel. As long as they don't channel it into kinetics, they can hate us all they want. How is the agricultural initiative?" "Productive," Vexil admitted. "We have terraformed the wastes of Korra. We are exporting grain to the vein systems. We are prosperous, but we are not free." "Freedom is a luxury for species that aren't facing extinction," Vance said, tapping the table. A hologram sprang up. It showed the galactic map. On the outer rim, a sector that had once been full of stars was now a blot of inky blackness. Vexil stared at it. The blot was bigger than it had been last year. "It has accelerated," Vance said softly. "The consumption rate is exponential. We have lost contact with 3 deep-range probes in the last month. It is not just eating matter. It is eating the physical laws that bind matter together. It is unmaking reality." "How long?" Vexil asked. 300 years, maybe 4. We are building the Halo Array, a network of hyperspace interdictors that might be able to create a firewall around the galaxy. But we need more Dyson swarms. We need more processing power. She looked at Vexil. "We need the Valhar engineering core. Your people were brilliant at building fortresses. We need you to build a fortress the size of a nebula." Vexil felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. "You want us to help you save the galaxy that you imprisoned us in." "I want you to earn your keep," Vance said. "We stripped your weapons. We didn't strip your minds. Join the project, Vexil. Give your people a purpose. A warrior needs a war. I'm giving you the biggest war in history." Vexil returned to Ethelgard with the data. He stood before the Reformed Council. Kravik was dead, having taken his own life in the 3rd year of the quarantine. The new counselors were younger, less scarred by the past, but still bitter. "The humans want our help," Vexil announced. "Let them rot," a counselor spat. "Let this great filter eat them." "If it eats them," Vexil said, projecting the hologram of the dying stars above the chamber, "it eats us for dessert. Look at the void. Look at the missing stars." The council fell silent. The Valhar had keen eyes for the stars. They navigated by them, worshipped them. To see them vanishing was a blasphemy deeper than any defeat. "This is the enemy," the counselor whispered. "This is the enemy," Vexil confirmed. "The humans are not the tyrants. They are the vanguard, and they are asking for the Valhar to stand the line." It was a slow shift, but it happened. The Valhar were a warrior race, and they had been denied a fight for too long. The idea of an enemy that threatened existence itself, an enemy that even the terrifying humans feared, ignited a spark in their cultural consciousness. They didn't build weapons. They built structural supports for the Halo Array. They designed hyperdense alloys that could withstand the stress of the interdictors. They worked side by side with human engineers, at first with cold hostility, then with grudging respect. They saw the human work ethic. They saw that the humans did not sleep, did not celebrate, did not rest. They saw a species driven by a singular, terrifying focus. The humans were not arrogant, they were desperate. They were a species traumatized by the knowledge of the end, working feverishly to prevent it. 1H. 100 years passed, then 2. The Valhar culture transformed. They were still proud, still loud, still obsessed with honor. But honor had been redefined. It was no longer about taking land, it was about holding the wall. The pale tyrants became the silent architects. The hatred faded into a grim camaraderie. Vexil lived far longer than his biology should have allowed, sustained by human medical technology. He wanted to see it. He wanted to see the day the test came. He was on the bridge of the Citadel of Dawn, a massive Valhar construction ship, when the alarms screamed. Not the local alarms, the galactic alert. The black blot had arrived at the edge of the Halo Array. "All frequencies open," came the voice of the Terran High Command. It wasn't Vance anymore, she had been dust for centuries. It was a new voice, but it carried the same steel. The event horizon has breached the outer perimeter, activating the array. All units brace for ontological shock. Vexil watched the screens. In the deep void, a line of light ignited. It was the Halo array, millions of stations, built by human and Valhar hands, firing in unison. They didn't fire lasers, they fired localized reality anchors. They reinforced the laws of physics, hardening spacetime into an unbreakable diamond. The darkness crashed against the light. It was a battle beyond comprehension. There were no explosions, only the screaming of geometry as the nothingness tried to unravel the somethingness. The Valhar crews worked furiously, reinforcing the shield harmonics, pouring energy into the grid. Sector 7 is buckling, a Valhar engineer shouted. The entropy loads are at 400%. Hold it together, Vexil ordered, his voice strong. Feed the auxiliary power from the Dyson swarm, do not let the line break. We are losing containment. We need a kinetic counterforce. Vexil looked at the tactical map. The human fleet, the descendants of the ships that had silenced Ethelgard, were moving. They weren't firing from a distance. They were diving into the breach. They are sacrificing themselves, the engineer whispered. The human ships, thousands of them, drove straight into the entropy wave. They detonated their cores, not to destroy, but to create massive bursts of raw creation energy, plugging the holes in reality with their own lives. They are dying for us, Vexil realized. The tyrants were throwing themselves into the maw of the beast to save the galaxy that had feared them. We cannot let them stand alone, Vexil roared. All ships engage tow beams, reinforce their structures. We are the Valhar. We do not let our allies die. For the first time in history, the Valhar and the humans fought as one. Not side by side, but interwoven. Valhar construction ships used their massive tractor beams to pull damaged human dreadnoughts out of the fire. Human fighters wove through the Valhar formations, intercepting the smaller fractures of reality that slipped through. It lasted for days, or maybe seconds. Time had no meaning in the battle for existence. And then the tide broke. The darkness recoiled. The halo array held. The reality anchors solidified. The nothingness, finding the galaxy too hard a nut to crack, slid away, diverted by the unbreakable wall of will and physics, moving off into the endless void to find easier prey. The silence returned, but this time it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of exhaustion, of survival. Vexil looked at the view screen. The stars were still there. The galaxy was scarred, the outer rim burned away, but it was whole. A channel opened. A human face appeared, bloody, exhausted, helmet off. "This is Terran Command," the human said. "Status report." Vexil stood up, his chitinous armor clinking. He felt the weight of centuries lift from his shoulders. "This is High Counselor Vexil of the Valhar," he said. "The line is held, the wall stands." The human nodded slowly. A smile, rare and cracked, broke his face. "Good work, Valhar. We couldn't have done it without the reinforcement on Sector 7. "We are proficient at fortification," Vexil said with a touch of the old arrogance. "It is our way." "It is," the human agreed. "The quarantine is lifted, Counselor. You've graduated." The link cut. Vexil walked to the observation deck. He looked out at the combined fleet, human silver and Valhar obsidian, floating together in the starlight. He remembered the day in the grand chamber, the fear, the anger. He remembered the warning he had given: they will never give you one last chance. He realized now that he had been wrong. They hadn't given them a last chance to surrender. They had given them a last chance to be better. They had stripped away the weakness of their aggression to reveal the strength of their endurance. The humans were terrifying, yes. They were absolute, but they were also the only reason the lights were still on. Vexil tapped the glass of the viewport. "We are the Valhar," he whispered to the universe. "See, and we are the Guardians." He turned back to his crew. "Set course for home. We have a lot of rebuilding to do, and send a message to Earth. Tell them the Valhar are ready for the next shift." The galaxy spun on, wounded but alive, protected by the silence of the humans and the shield of the Valhar, united in the dark, watching the deep together.